Have you ever wondered how trauma shapes your mind, your body, your emotions? Today I'm sharing some insights from my story and research that will help you understand trauma and its lasting impacts. Trauma isn't actually about an event. It is about how we experience that event or events. It's less about actually what happened, and it's more about how we internalize it and how it starts creating changes in our body and our brain. It can be acute, as in a one-time event, or it can be chronic or complex, as in repetitive events over time. And it comes from situations that make us feel intensely threatened or unsafe. For me, I grew up in a very chaotic environment. When I was 4 years old, I still remember I lived on a goat farm. My dad would go down and run his cafe that he owned down the street, leaving me and my sister alone with my mom. On this particular day, my mom was in a complete rage. It was chaotic in our home. She was yelling and screaming, and fortunately, our neighbor called and was talking to my sister about one of our goats when she overheard the commotion. She reached out to my dad, who reached out to the police. They all came over to the house, and as that police officer was trying to engage in a conversation with my mom was screaming and yelling and threatening to kill all of us and bury us and being very violent in front of the police officer with us. And I didn't know that that was teaching me that I had to be hyper aware of people's moods around me so that I could keep the situation calm and safe for everybody. In fact, that thinking and belief system followed me into adulthood and into relationship after relationship after relationship until I began to do the work to heal. Because trauma has lasting impacts on your brain. First of all, it shrinks the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory and emotional regulation. It has impacts to your amygdala, making you hyperactive, hyper-aroused, fearful, reactive to situations. And then thirdly, it impacts your prefrontal cortex, decreasing its function, which is already not fully developed when you're a child, and impacts your ability to problem solve, to have planning and complex thinking, and basically resourcing. And those are just 3 impacts. They have noted so many more impacts through functional MRI studies. It can create all kinds of symptoms for people and impact the way that you show up. Lots of people have flashbacks, nightmares, they may have intrusive thoughts, or all of those things. Emotional numbness or detachment or dissociation or forgetting whole parts of your life. Or when you do something wrong, ruminating about it, just going over it and over it and over again, even if there's a part of your brain that's saying to you, this is really not that big of a deal. Or even physical complaints like headaches, gastrointestinal issues are extremely common. And then hypervigilance, having hyperarousal, hyperreactivity, or even freezing, shutting down, and basically not being able to respond. There were so many of these symptoms that came up for me, but I noticed that when I would get triggered and I get particularly anxious, I would have gastrointestinal issues and I could not go to the bathroom enough times. Your experience is valid, and I have to say for myself, for years, I minimized it. I said to myself, why can't I just get over this? It probably wasn't even that big of a deal. What is my problem? But the reality is, as Viktor Frankl, an Auschwitz concentration camp survivor, said, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal circumstance is normal. So there's a reason for the symptoms you have. And if you're curious about those symptoms, there are all kinds of scales out there. One in particular is the dissociative experiences scale that can help you have a sense of what kinds of symptoms that you're experiencing that are dissociative. But moving forward, it's important to know that the trauma was not your fault. However, it is possible to heal. First and foremost, you want to start having a sense of validation for how you're showing up and that you are having difficulties and any feelings that you have that come up or feelings that you're not having that maybe you feel like you should. And then starting to figure out and understand those triggers when you're triggered and beginning to start learning how to emotionally regulate and calm down your nervous system. Things like focusing on your feet on the ground or how old you are and where you are to bring yourself back to the present moment. Your story, it matters. And if you experience trauma, know that your feelings are valid and that healing is a journey worth taking. If you have questions about symptoms, if you have questions about evidence-based practices or different approaches that really help, go to my website at www.resolvetorise.com. I also added in a free companion guide if you're curious about my phased approach that you can sign up for and get immediately.